Good morning and welcome to the Ad-Hoc Scrutiny Regeneration panel. I wonder if panel members would like to introduce themselves. Councillor Cooper.
Andrew Cooper, Councillor for the Newsham Ward.
Councillor Lawson.
John Lawson, Councillor for Cleckheaton Ward.
And I'm Councillor Liz Smage, and we have apologies from Councillor Hussain and also apologies from the portfolio holder, Councillor Turner. So minutes of the previous meeting are in the agenda pack. Do we agree those minutes? Yes, thank you. And does anybody have any interests they wish to declare this morning? And items are in public. We've no deputations and petitions notified, and we've no public questions notified. So we're just going to change two of the items around. So we will start with item 8, which is estate and Somerset buildings. So if the officers would like to introduce themselves before introducing the item, please, and then we'll move to questions. Thank you.
Morning, hi, I'm Edward Highfield, I'm Service Director for Skills and Regeneration, and in a moment I'll talk to you about the Station Gateway project.
Good morning, I'm Joan Bartholomew, Director for Development, and I'm here today for the Estate and Somerset's Buildings item and some items in private session.
Good morning, Simon Taylor, I'm Head of Town Centre Programmes and I'm supporting Joanne a couple of items today, thank you.
Good morning, Sarah Collins, I'm Programme Manager in the Town Centre Programmes team.
So first of all, welcome. Can I give my apologies from Councillor Turner? He would have liked to have been here today because we've got a few exciting items for you regarding the regeneration of Huddersfield Town Centre. The first item is the Estate and Somerset Buildings residential development, which, as you've previously said, is agenda item 8 and on page 21, Chair. This is an exciting opportunity for us. I'll just give you a few headlines and then I'm happy to move straight to questions about it. Those of you that know the town centre well will be aware of estate buildings and Somerset buildings. Estate buildings sits within the St George's Square and Somerset buildings boundaries onto St Peter's Gardens. We're extremely pleased to be working with 13 Group, who are a company that has a good social heart around it and has done significant regeneration across the northeast of England, and we are supporting them as they support us to expand their reach into Yorkshire. They're also working with us on some of the smaller sites regeneration in Adele Buckley's team as well, and this particular piece is something where we're going to be working with them to allow them to bring their ideas to the table around opportunities for live and work units within estate buildings and Somerset buildings. It gives them some time to bring forward to the table their ideas around how we can make our blueprint vision for residential in that particular area a reality. I'd like to touch on a couple of points around 13 Group. They are of robust financial standing and they have an excellent relationship with Homes England, which we hope to benefit from. That said, our relationship ourselves with Homes England is a particularly good one. I would also like to say that they come with good standing with Heritage England, which is particularly important given the listed building nature of these two buildings. And in pre-work for bringing forward this, the product of this exclusivity agreement, which will be their development view of both of those buildings. Most people will have noticed that we have scaffolded estate buildings whilst we undertake roofing repairs and repairs to the facade, to using some Heritage Action Zone funding to keep that building in good order. To minimise disruption to the town centre at the same time, we will be undertaking the Byram Arcade roofing, again another listed building of significant standing within the town centre. I'm happy at this point to take any questions you have around that and around the Huddersfield Town Centre Living Plan, which is a document that we've recently completed and helps to express what we want to see around residential offer within the town centre, and we hope this document and our work with 13 Group will bring forward more and more development opportunities to the town centre beyond those that already exist. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions then? Councillor Cooper?
So a few thoughts, and one is about timing, really. The blueprint is coming along, and obviously we wish it well, and the cultural heart and all the work's going around the gateway, all those things are happening. And I'm wondering whether, in terms of the viability of flats and the viability of residential would be improved if those things are already in place before we say to people, hey, come to Huddersfield, it's a great place, look at it, rather than try and do residential first. So I'm just wondering if any thought has been given to the timing of going live with residential. So that's one particular thought. Regarding market testing and looking at the sort of people who would want to live in the town centre, I think what we'd like to see probably is young professionals, commuters who are coming into the town centre and want to live there. I'm just wondering specifically how we've actually ascertained whether these people are probably the people we want to attract would be attracted. And so, yeah, I'd be really interested to know something along those lines. Yeah, I'll leave it that for the time being.
So if I can answer your second question first, if I may, Councillor Cooper. So in terms of who are we looking to attract, it is young professionals. Edward and Simon both lead on the Station to Stadium Gateway, which is part of our enterprise and business corridor. We're seeking to bring in more opportunity for those businesses in that particular area. And what we have found, and what 13 Group also bring to the table, is an established record of working hand in hand with businesses to understand the types of accommodation that their workforce may be wanting to live in. They've done significant work in Middlesbrough, near the train station, coincidentally, where they have worked in partnership with a number of key businesses around providing attractive accommodation offers for them to be able to attract in the right workforce for that. So it goes a little bit hand in hand. In terms of your first question, I think this is a little bit chicken and egg, so what does come first? That said, estate buildings is something that we have been wanting to bring forward for a time. 13 Group are exceptionally interested in it. And they have got a track record of bringing forward that accommodation before some of the business offer. As well as that, the largest amount of the construction within the town centre that needs to be completed down that end will be completed within the same time frame as this particular work is expected to take place. So we've got a report in private session on the George Hotel later, and where the time frames for that are reasonably short, and we're awaiting the Luft bid for the Northumberland Street. So I'm not worried about us putting this residential into this part of town as much as I would be if we were to put something in much nearer to the cultural heart, which is a longer term construction site.
Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I have two questions, two-part questions. We always like these types of questions, don't we? The first is about air quality. It was good to take a walk this morning around the site. It's always good to refresh our memories about what the actual territory looks like when we're talking about these things. So I'd be interested in just hearing a little bit more about the relationship between the ring road and the air quality in the ring road, and the principle of developing residential on those sites. I know we already have some, but to actually plan a larger scale issues there, then I'd just like to hear a little bit more about that. The other question I'd have is a kind of an existential question for the project, which is cost of living and deliverability, and the financial review process that we go through. I'm not sure whether you want to answer that or whether you want to bring that information back to us. I'm quite happy with what you come back with. Thank you.
So again, I'll take your second question first, if I may, and then I'm going to hand off your first question to Simon, so that's him prepped for that one. So in terms of the cost of living and the financial appraisals, obviously we're at the development stage with 13 groups, so that would be something I'd expect us to be looking at towards spring of next year. We would expect, obviously, that at that point in time that there may be some changes in the market around deliverability, inflation, that sort of thing. What I would want to say, though, is that we are already aware that a state buildings project would not come forward if we're not unable to leverage in external funding, because what we have found with some of the work that we undertake within the town centre in our listed buildings is that we need some of that funding to put in place to bring forward the viability. In terms of cost of living from a residential perspective, from a resident's perspective, the intention is to look at a level of rent set that is affordable and works within that. But again, we will wait for the financial and the development appraisal to come back from 13 Group, which I'm quite happy to bring back to Scrutiny at that time.
Can I ask about as we've been talking about financial and legal implications, your report indicates that there will be an update report to Cabinet at some point when you have got the plans further along. But your milestones on page 24 don't have decision points in them. So when would you be planning on the financial aspects of this project being available for Cabinet to consider?
I'll take that question if I may, Chair. So the reason there isn't a decision point is because it's incredibly clear that we are just in an exclusivity agreement to get to a development appraisal. We're not in an exclusivity agreement to deliver something at this stage. So the update for Cabinet, the same as we would bring an update to Ad-Hoc Scrutiny, will look at what 13 Group are proposing and its viability, and at that point we'd put in place a time frame to bring any decision, should there be one to be made at that point, and I certainly hope that there would be, through to Cabinet. Again, we're expecting 13 Group to have information that we can start to share late spring next year.
Councillor Cooper. Councillor Lawson's air quality question. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, just a couple of comments on that. I hear the point about air quality issues across the town centre. I think there are some examples of people living in the town already. We have example 103 New Street is our latest student accommodation block close to the Ring Road. We've got Standard House, Thatcher Court as well, which are all student accommodation, all subject to rigorous scrutiny around air quality. So I'm pretty confident that we can move forward with estate buildings, knowing what we know from those developments and what we have to do to the building to mitigate against that. I think in the longer term, we need to look at a strategy around how vehicles enter the town, which is the primary source of some of the air quality issues that we've got. So working with Edward's team in major projects, we'll be looking at how people move through the town and whether there are some routes that we can actually try to sort of control a little bit more so that we have less traffic drifting through the town centre. So yes, we can do the development. We know what we need to do from previous experiences, but there's a long-term strategy that needs to go alongside that as well.
Just for whether we're working to any particular energy efficiency standards with the refurbishment here and whether retrofit plays a big role. And the second half of my two-part question, because we're doing two-part questions, is district heating network announced yesterday. Are we planning on connecting the residential up to the district heating network? Are we taking that opportunity?
So in terms of building standards, we're working with 13 Group to bring forward the best level of building standard that we can within that. So I don't think we can be held at this moment for a specific target around that, but we'll see what comes forward. As you're no doubt aware, old listed buildings are very difficult to bring forward to an exceptionally high standard, but not impossible. And that said, it is a particularly solid building, so there should be things that we can do around that. The district heating network, there are a number of key projects within the blueprint that are ready to take advantage of the district heat network. One of those is the Cultural Heart. In terms of the George Hotel and estate buildings and that wider station to stadium corridor, there's some further work to be done on that.
I mean, as regards the standards, I suppose it depends how much money you want to throw at it, really. You know, if you're looking at a sort of passive house standard for an old building, you know, you can spend an awful lot of money trying to get it close to or near to that. So it would be just good to have an idea about where the intention is to go. If it's difficult, then you would expect that using the heating network would be a better idea, because if you can't insulate it, if you can't make it very energy efficient, then bung in a heating system which is of a low carbon nature. So it'd be good to know a lot more about that.
And I think that's something that we can bring back to Scrutiny when 13 Group have worked through the development and the options for them. They have a track record in terms of these particular buildings. We're going to be working with them. I'm not trying to swerve round your question, but what I want to do is we've been very open with them for them to bring forward the best level of energy and space standards. Space is important within that building, and give us options around what that does around financial viability. And all the projects within the town centre ring road are aware of the district heat network. So we want them to come forward to us because they have a track record around development within town centres and living of the type that we want to do. So I'm quite happy to bring that back, and we'll take those challenges and make sure that 13 Group are aware of the steer from Scrutiny around that.
So yeah, it'd just be good. I looked at the living plan and went through it, and just thinking that climate change, it would be good to have a higher profile in there. You know, people are going to be living in these houses. We've got the cost of living crisis, which very much is linked to higher fuel bills, and so it just feels like there ought to be something in there which is a bit more high profile.
So we'll take that away, Councillor Cooper, and I'll ask Adele and Liz to respond to that in the next reiteration of the town centre living plan, because it is a live document.
Can we ask, your report says that 13 have sought feedback from graduates, and they also have a track record for housing for older people in town centres. So what is the aim of the council, or are you leaving that to 13, to say what mix of provision you would look for coming forward in both of these buildings, please?
I think we're looking for them to bring their ideas to the table around both of these buildings, but I do personally believe both of these buildings could have a different level of offer with them. Certainly, if I was to express a view, it would be that given its proximity to the train station, graduate entry-level jobs, professionals, people working in tech or on our station to stadium corridor, that would be what we're looking to attract into that particular building. Somerset buildings, given its proximity to some green space and its differing place within the town, might lend itself to perhaps older people or small family units. We are waiting for them to bring forward their ideas. They've done significant work in Middlesbrough and in Hull, and they know what works. I think the other thing that we're very open to is to, if people are coming forward via the consultations and the information that 13 are gathering, to say there's a need for a particular sector or that, for us to be open to that. We want our town to be a vibrant and comfortable and safe place to live, and people have to want to live there, don't they?
Councillor Lawson.
So thank you, Chair. On page 24 of the pack, page 4 of this particular item, at the top we talk about 15-minute neighbourhoods. So that's all about having the services available within roughly 15 minutes walk of where you're living. And that's a really good concept. It's something that I've always kind of adhered to in these kinds of situations. That does rely on the services being there, though. So outside of this particular development, is there a piece of work going on which kind of changes the sea level so all the boats float, if you know what I mean, so that actually we are providing the services that the people there will need. So if we are wanting to attract elderly people, do we have the services that those people will need, and how do we plan ahead to anticipate those services? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Lawson. The 15-minute neighbourhood is a concept that's well known, but it's one that you have to understand who lives in the neighbourhood to decide what's in there, because if your neighbourhood is full of young professionals living in apartment-type flats, the likelihood of them needing a primary school is low. If your neighbourhood is full of a mixture of people, then you're going to want to look at GP surgeries, access to healthcare, etc. We're very lucky within our town centre and just beyond the ring road in that there is a good mix of services provided within that. But that said, were we to want to expand a large proportion of the living, particularly in line with the town centre living plan, we would need to look at those things such as access to healthcare. We have already, the school provision has been taken care of by the is it Orchard or Bowman? I can't remember. The one at the school at Birkby. So there are things that we would need to rebalance around that. That said, our town centre isn't massive in terms of town centre living, so there's room for us to shape and grow that, but certainly it's something that we would need to consider as the proposal comes forward from 13. And I do expect 13 to say to us, people of this type may find it difficult to live here because of those services. One thing I can say is that connectivity to retail and to transport networks, regardless of where you are within the town centre, is within a 15-minute walk.
Have you done any, or will this be up to 13, to do some market testing to see how towns and cities that have city living already, if that is still a vibrant market following the pandemic, or whether people's views have changed slightly? Are you looking, with the closeness to the train station and the upgrade to the line, are you looking to attract people who will commute to various places for work? So how are you bringing employment into Huddersfield as well?
So most definitely we're looking for people who call this home and work elsewhere. We want them to call the town centre their home and feel that it has a retail and leisure mix for them, where they can live their lives but potentially commute out to Leeds, Manchester, particularly given the high-speed connectivity that will be coming shortly. I went on a fact-finding conversation with 13 Group to a number of their sites prior to us bringing forward this report for Cabinet. And for me, what I was most struck with was you can continually keep your buildings full and vibrant if you have a high quality and well-managed offer. And that's one of the things that I believe 13 Group bring to the table for us, is the quality of the space that they offer, the affordability of that for the market that they sit within, and a real good listening ear with tenants. Lots of tenant suggestions I was seeing that were being implemented almost instantly by the people that were on the ground managing those units. I also saw a unit that was being vacated on the Friday and was going to be handed to somebody else on the Monday very seamlessly. waiting lists for people for that type of accommodation. So I think there is a market for a quality offer that sits within an affordable price bracket. And I do believe that the attraction of the fast network links from Huddersfield out to other areas will bring people for whom this wants to be home. But I also think the work on the station to the stadium gateway, the investment there, the attractiveness of the university campus and Southgate will allow us to keep those people in Huddersfield who want to expand their career and want to live here as well.
Are there any other questions? What about if we're wanting to have more town centre living, what about connectivity, not just transport, but connectivity for modern living?
So if I might ask, are you on about fibre? Yes, so the town centre fibre network is well established around where that's going. One of the things that I was most struck at with the units that I went to see that 13 had done was how techy they were, you know, and what the standard of expectation of people in that particular market was around the type of broadband and connectivity that they had, the type of tech that was in the building that allowed them to live their lives as well. So, yeah, that has been considered.
Okay, thank you very much. If we've no further questions on that report, then we've got some items that we'd like to bring forward that we've discussed at a later date. And we'll move to item 7 then, the Huddersfield Station Gateway.
Just bring the presentation.
Thank you. Okay, so really this just builds upon and adds extra pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. So as you'll probably be aware, the station gateway is one of the sectors, one of the segments within the overall Huddersfield blueprint that involves the station itself and its immediate environs. The HD1 Developments Limited owned, thank you, station warehouse, which obviously is the iconic building that you see whenever you arrive into Huddersfield train station. St George's Square, the George Hotel, which you're going to hear about later, and the estate buildings that you've just heard about. So hopefully that kind of gives you a sense of how we view this area of town as one kind of connected block. The activity around, this is where Councillor Cooper's first point around timing, I think, is a theme that's going to run through everything I'm about to say. Really, timing is so important here in terms of the TRU works that you've alluded to and understanding the timescales and being able to, when that means we can get on site to do certain things, but also the benefits that brings in terms of the viability, the attractiveness of some of the environment and the opportunities around it. I think we do feel that the warehouse specifically is a very significant private sector-led development opportunity that we hope TRU and the benefits of TRU can really now spur on. But understanding the timescales of TRU and when that might be realistic, I think is the key point. So TRU itself, you'll be aware, it's a very, very significant, over £1.5 billion investment. The Transport Works Act order has now been confirmed. So, you know, it is all systems go. There's an awful lot of work being led by Network Rail to deliver TRU now. A large proportion of that investment and that activity is in Kirklees. That brings with it all of those benefits in the long term, but the short-term pain and disruption that I know you're aware of. There is a very significant hub of activity around the station itself in Huddersfield. It's already the second busiest station in the region, and the demand forecasts are for that to increase significantly as a result of TRU. And so as part of the TRU project at the station itself, we will see a new platform between the current, is it platform 8 and the station warehouse, a new footbridge to connect over the station into the town centre at the northern end of the station. An extension of the underpass, the tunnel that you use to get to platform 8 will be extended to get to the new platform. And then, of course, there will be the electrification of the route itself and the new canopies over the listed structure of the station. So a very significant period of investment and construction around the station itself. I think it's important to understand that the TRU and the works funded by Network Rail, they will only deliver the things that are essential to deliver the rail project, essentially. There are things that we would like it to do in terms of that wider regeneration, wider betterment, which I'll come to in a moment. But the core transport investment through Network Rail won't fund all of that. What that will do is just the Transport Works Act order is all about the core essential transport investment. If we want to come in on the back of that to have betterment and to achieve other wider objectives, then we've got to work alongside Network Rail. We've got to secure other funding. We've got to programme that in. We can't expect Network Rail to pay for all of it. It won't come as part of the core programme. So that again is one of the key themes of this. How can we secure other investment, our own investment, WICA funds, and how can we work alongside TRU to maximise the benefit of the investment that they're making? So briefly on this isn't a deep dive into TRU itself, but we are now becoming much more clear on the details. There's still a lot to emerge, but we are starting to get greater clarity now around the programme and the works of TRU itself. We are getting construction plans. We know where the compounds are going to be. We understand the closures and the impacts across the borough. Clearly, it's of a scale probably not seen before, really seldom seen. But we know, and I think the pertinent point for this conversation is around, we know that the station warehouse car park has been taken by Network Rail as a compound. So the surface car park adjacent to the station warehouse will be a site compound until 2025-26. So some of the wider regeneration ambitions for what we can do later need to be tempered by the fact that it's going to be a site compound until 2026. That gives us a window of opportunity to get everything lined up and ready to go. So in a perfect world, Network Rail vacates the site when they don't need it anymore, and then it's about what happens next. In terms of the wider area, what are we doing about trying to maximise the benefits and the regeneration around Station Warehouse? We would still be having this conversation if TRU was never considered. It would still be a really important station. Huddersfield was well connected before TRU. Will just be even better connected with TRU. We have what's called a Transforming Cities Fund bid, a £16 million project called Huddersfield Rail Station Connections, which is looking at a series of 6 funded projects, all externally funded projects through the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, which is all about getting people to and from the station better, particularly prioritising active travel, so bus, walking, cycling, and looking at the principal streets and ring road junctions such as Northumberland Street, which I'll say a little bit about in a moment, John William Street, St John's Road, and some of the ring road crossings such as Trinity. Now, clearly, this is the point about timing again. The TRU works do pose a challenge to these, so we are having to slip the delivery of some of these to accommodate the TRU works. Overall, of course, we think that's a good thing because you get the benefit of TRU. In the short term, it does present some programme challenges. But we do have this £16 million currently of the Transforming Cities Fund to look at those connections and those walking, cycling, public transport routes into and around the station. I said I'll say a little bit more about Northumberland Street. I think this links into the station to stadium. This is obviously a critical route and has got some of the iconic architecture into the town and to and from the station. I think this really, Northumberland Street and what we're proposing through the Transforming Cities Fund should really set the standard for what we want in our town centre, about very livable, walkable, bikeable spaces that are pleasant to spend time in. Takes on even greater importance with the University of Huddersfield's Health Innovation Campus at Southgate, which you'll be familiar with, the Levelling Up Fund bid around the New Market, and our own business centre at the Glass Box and the Digital Media Centre. So a really, really key axis through and into the town centre of Northumberland Street. We consulted last summer, I think it was, around early proposals around the investment in Northumberland Street, creating more of a boulevard approach with sud schemes and trees and much better pedestrian access. That was something that came through very, very strongly through the public consultation. And we're in the process around detailed design and full business case submission for Northumberland Street and John William Street. Obviously, stakeholder and public consultations are a really important aspect that I know Scrutiny often looks at. So as part of that phase 1 consultation that I mentioned, we did a range of stakeholder workshops, online Q&As, displays at the library and at the rail station. It's been on the Wiki Your Voice website. We did mail drops. press releases, social media, the usual things that you would expect. And as I say, certainly the feedback that came very, very strongly from the likes of the university, the likes of Huddersfield Unlimited and some of the travel groups was around the importance of the pedestrian experience along Northumberland Street. You know, if you're, and the crossings really with John William Street, there is a lot of vehicle traffic still, and that, you know, that has a purpose, but it is not a particularly pleasant place to walk. And as we see the Health Innovation Campus at Southgate get built out over the next decade, you know, we think that the numbers of pedestrians walking up and down Northumberland Street to and from the station and the Health Innovation Campus will grow significantly. So the priority around balancing the cars and the on-street parking and the access for the businesses, not saying that's not important at all, but balancing that with the user experience or the cyclist or the pedestrian, and doing something, as I say, that I think sets the standard around attractive places and neighbourhoods within our town centre. So there will be a second stage consultation later in this year. We're working on the visuals of that because I think, you know, picture tells 1,000 stories. Hopefully we can present to the public some really, really compelling visions of what can be created on Northumberland Street that I hope will be well received later in the year. So moving back to what else we're doing really around the station gateway and what else are we planning around maximising the benefits of TRU. Ultimately, we see this as a catalyst. It's not a bit like you're asking around town centre residential. I think town centre, we would be having the town centre residential conversation regardless of TRU. TRU, though, is just an extra string to the bow and a catalyst. But the big question then is what happens to the development opportunities, what happens to the immediate area around the station, and what are we doing to work with public and private sector partners to plan for that now. 2026 sounds like a long way away, but clearly it's not, and we need to be planning now so that we have things in place ready to go when the TRU works are completed. The critical thing I think of the last maybe 6-12 months is that Network Rail and Transpennine Express have really upped their intent and their ambition around working with us and working with HD1 Developments Limited around this station and their master plan. So they are, through Transpennine Express and Network Rail, we've got very, very active partners. They don't just think about their immediate red line boundary. They do have a very, very vested interest and genuine interest in the wider area, how their customers get to and from the station, what it feels like, and you know, Network Rail need to demonstrate the wider benefit of the TRU investment. So they are interested in the regeneration effect, what happens to the warehouse, what happens to the wider area, and how they can demonstrate that for their investment they're able to contribute to wider catalytic regeneration in the north of England. Transpennine Express feel that the station is already currently underserved by car parking. So when you lay on top of that the additional passengers that are forecast through TRU, the Transpennine Express are flagging that there is a need to sort out some of the car parking and access arrangements, which opens up a conversation about the warehouse car park when it's no longer a site compound. What's the future demand and scope to look at car parking on the eastern side? Bearing in mind there's some very sensitive buildings and listed structures around it, but that's a key element of work that we will need to do with the asset owner, HD1 Development Limited, and Network Rail, TPE, ourselves, and Wicker. And then the ambition for the warehouse is ultimately a private sector-led scheme that might have an element of residential, office, potentially some food and beverage on the ground floor, range of possibilities. And this is, again, the point about timing. That building, you know, it's a significant investment. It may need a little bit of help from the public sector to make it work, but ultimately it needs to be commercially viable. The values in Huddersfield at this point in time probably don't justify that investment. But hopefully in a few years' time, with all the other things that are happening with Cultural Heart, with the town centre living offer, with the connectivity benefits of TRU, this is all, the strategy is all pointing towards a point where we hope that the values will start to justify that level of investment in the warehouse, so that one day you won't see an empty iconic building, you will see a revitalised, rejuvenated iconic building, but that is going to need a lot of work and partnership with the private sector owners. So the next steps really is working around a joint master plan. We've had various attempts at this. As I say, the TRU then sort of has delayed some of those. But we have now got a much more renewed and purposeful partnership with the main players, as I say, Network Rail, Transpacific Express, HD1, ourselves, and the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. Our intention, what we're working on right now, is moving towards a jointly funded, jointly sponsored master plan that will set out and try and address all of these issues about car parking, about conversion of the building. I mentioned the underpass that goes through the station and will pop up onto the new platform. One of the strands of activity then is we believe it is entirely feasible to extend that underpass further so that it comes up into the warehouse environs and the car park, so that you potentially could get a new eastern entrance to the station with car park and drop off and electric vehicle charging and all of those kind of things, and create more of a station that faces two directions rather than just one out into St George's Square, and the benefits that could bring to the town centre, and making sure that there's a challenge there in terms of revenue protection. Is it a public access or is it for customers of the station? But those are all the kind of issues that we've talked about many a time, but we haven't actually all kind of come together, resolved them and firmed up in a plan that we're all signed up and committed to. But that's really the plan ahead. Positively, we have got some funding allocated within the West Yorkshire Transport Fund. There's £10 million, I think that's well known, allocated in the West Yorkshire Transport Fund. Back to timing, the West Yorkshire Transport Fund really needs to be spent and done by 2026. So we are at the kind of the challenging end of trying to shoehorn that funding that we're trying to retain into the West Yorkshire Transport Fund. Whether or not it comes from that specific tranche of funding or not, I think it's abundantly clear and shared with the West Yorkshire Combined Authority that having some funds available to work alongside Network Rail, to come in on the back of TRU investment, to finish it off really in terms of the regeneration impact, stitching it into the town centre and helping bring forward some of those wider regeneration opportunities and helping support the private sector scheme at the warehouse is an absolutely top priority for us and a top priority for the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, and it will remain so. So whether it's whether it's the transport fund money that we have on the table today or a successor fund, then I'm confident that there will be funds available to support that. It might be more than 10 million, it might be less. We haven't done that detailed work at the moment, but the good news is it's absolutely recognised, and we have that marker in the sand already in the transport fund. So that's, I think, what we wanted to say. Happy to take questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Can I start off by, you've mentioned rail and parking and cyclings in your report as well. What about bus connectivity with the station? And are we planning any clean air zones in the town centre, like Leeds and Bradford have been putting in? Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, bus absolutely intrinsic to the plans, and obviously we would like, through modal shift and wider change, we'd like more people to be using bus over the next few years and beyond. The really, really big strategic play, if it can be achieved, is that eastern entrance to the station. So we touched upon with St George's Square and John William Street. Part of the challenge of the town centre at the moment is the amount of vehicle traffic that still goes through the town centre. Northumberland Street, John William Street are busy roads still, and there is increasing conflict with walking and cycling and public transport prioritisation. Some of that traffic is dropping off at the station. So if we are able to open up an eastern entrance, eastern arrival and drop off and car park and taxis and so on, then that has the potential to take quite a significant amount of that traffic out of the core of the town centre and onto the other side, which would free up the front of the station for things like buses and make a much more smooth, pleasant arrival for things like buses and bus prioritisation. That's a long-term ambition. It might not be, it sounds simple, but it's not going to be simple. But that's the sort of the long-term thinking that we have, because we recognise that, yeah, buses would be absolutely critical to that. Clean Air Zone, a little bit, I've got some scars in my back from a previous role about Clean Air Zone. I mean, they were legally mandated by government. We're not legally mandated by government, and I'm not aware that there's any voluntary plans to go there.
Thank you. actually partly to do with that last point about conflict between pedestrians and traffic. One of the key things that I always feel about the train station is that, I mentioned it this morning, there's a concertina effect with mass arrivals of trains all at once and disgorging out into St George's Square. And I can see that having the car park at the rear would actually be a great benefit. Would it be enough, do we think, to flatten out that kind of that mass sort of gathering of passengers in St George's Square? And I know this is work for further down the line, really, as we start modelling, but it's something I want to keep my eye on anyway, is just how effective that would be. Because I can see this being actually work we do on this being a model for perhaps other sites in the town centre and maybe other parts of the district as well, where we start to talk about pedestrianisations and about how we deal with traffic and pedestrian conflict, and cyclists, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, really. I don't have much more to say than that. I think that, there will always be very significant spikes when the big trains arrive. But yeah, that's as you alluded to, really, that's the level of detail we need to get into next. What we've just received is some of the forecasts from Transpennine Express. So we need to sort of plug those forecasts into our own view around traffic and utilisation around the town centre. And then as the proposals emerge, be able to be in a position to answer that with some authority.
So the warehouse has been sort of, always felt like to be a bit of a semi-detached partner, and I'm just wondering how on board they are right now. How hand in glove are we with them in terms of their plans? Are their plans our plans? Are we not just, if you like, consulting with each other, but have a joint vision of where we're going? Because it's always felt like they are semi-detached, that they're not quite with us, and so just like a bit of reassurance about that, I guess. I mean, the opportunity, I think, is that there's a sort of workspace there which people can deal with the peaks in demand. So, I'm not going to go to Leeds at 8:30. I'm going to go at 9:30 or 10 o'clock, and I'll work in this workspace in St George's Warehouse or the Hive Coffee opposite or whatever. But it feels like that seems to be one of the things that would be a real benefit from that space. But we never seem to talk to them as elected members. We don't seem to have that dialogue with them. And so it just feels a bit distant. Car parking. Whenever we sort of talk about car parking, I mention electric charging points. People say, oh, well, we'll put in 10 charging points. I always think there's like a lost opportunity there. And I think that practically every parking space that we put on should have an electric charging point, because eventually people can be queuing up for these, and the more we do earlier on, the more we become the petrol station of the future. The council replaces the petrol station as a provider of fuel for cars, and so that would be great if that was sort of, because if people are leaving their car, then why not have it charging while they're away? Sort of following on from John's comments, really, the sort of city centres and town centres which seem to do really well are the ones which grasp pedestrianisation in a big way and go, you know what, I know there's going to be people who are going to be upset. I know there's going to be flack with this, but pedestrianisation is we see a place like Birmingham, which has gone really big on pedestrianisation. And you wonder whether we could be a bit bolder about this. Councillors shouldn't be bold, should they? Should hide around. But I think we could be bolder on pedestrianisation. And you look at a place like Northumberland Street and think, actually, should that be a pedestrianised area going as part of the connectivity with the new health campus? So yeah, just a few thoughts on that.
Okay, thank you. So where HD1 Developments Limited, the asset owner of the warehouse, I talk fairly regularly with their development lead based in Huddersfield. So I hope, I mean, they're not here to say for themselves, but I hope they would say that they feel that we are in a better place than we've been previously. Certainly I've heard conversations sometimes where, you know, we have to remind people that it's not our asset, it's their asset, and ultimately they will make the decisions around it. So it's ultimately a collaboration. It's about coming together to see if there is that shared vision and what do they need to help bring it forward. But yeah, the kind of things you're talking about in terms of workspace are absolutely where they're at in terms of the opportunity. So I very much hope that we, you know, as I say, it's one of those things where we can't do this on our own. We need Network Rail, we need HD1 Developments Limited, we need TPE, and we are going to need Wicker, because that's probably where a lot of the regeneration funding is going to be channeled through. So it is a collaboration. The master planning process is about trying to put pen to paper and really flush out the detail of that. But I hope they would say they feel they are at that table. They need to be at that table. It's their asset. Car parking EV, yeah, we haven't got into the detail about numbers and all the rest of it, but I think it's an important point to take the steer around it. It should set the benchmark, shouldn't it? It should be leading really around it, and you know, seeing it. It's not just a car park; it's more a mobility hub. It's got much more other things going on. It was not sort of the car park that we've had for the last 50 years. Pedestrianisation, yeah, take your steer. It's a balance, isn't it? There are some very important and challenging things around servicing, for example. It's really important that we understand, you know, what's something that I'm thinking of other streets that we've looked at. It sounds simple, and it probably is the right thing, but there's complexity in terms of access and servicing and all the rest of it. And we've got some limited successes, I think, and experiences around the experimental traffic regulation orders that were put in through COVID and the benefits of things, and where it works, starting to see businesses come forward and say, actually, that was brilliant. We want more of it, please. So, yeah. And it all, the point is, it all fits together, doesn't it? Because, you know, more independent coffee shops spilling out onto the street, more pleasant environment, creates more people that want to live in the town centre. It's all symbiotic, isn't it? So, yeah, I think there is scope within the town centre. The town centre should be a really, really pleasant place to visit, to spend time, to dwell, to go into the shops, the range of leisure opportunities, whether that's free or paid for. That's where, you know, that's where Kingsgate fits in. That's where Cultural Heart fits in. These things are all interconnected, clearly.
Thanks. Are there any more questions on this report? Can I just come back to buses, please? Because one of the things that is, living where I live, you probably use Leeds Station more than Huddersfield Station, unless I'm coming into Huddersfield on the train. And the connectivity between the buses and the trains is something that is often key for people's maximum journey time using public transport and leaving their cars at home. And so it did concern me that there wasn't any mention of connectivity in relation to public transport in your plans. Maybe just, you know, it was because you were talking about the station and the Network Rail projects. But when you're doing the master planning, will you be involving the combined authority in relation to buses as well as trains, so we can get that connectivity? Because it is difficult to get it right, isn't it?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It's a really, really important point. Thank you for making it. We will absolutely make sure, because we've got a workshop coming up in a couple of weeks' time, which is called the Last Mile. Because it's all great having these journey time savings of your rail journey, but if you're waiting an hour to get a bus at your house and it's not connected at the other end, then your true door-to-door journey time is still unacceptable. So the importance of that last mile is absolutely recognised. So no, it's a really, really important point. We have got things in place, and we'll make sure that's adequately reflected.
Thank you. The master plan, you're saying you're going to have a cohesive set of master plans, probably reporting back in early 2023.
Probably regretting the word early, but yeah.
2.15.
No, I know.
It's 2023. Is that still on for 2023, early 2023?
Yeah, so the timescales we're working on is we've got a draft of the brief, which is we're on sort of version 2 or 3 that's been around for comments. I need to get the partners to sign that off and commit the resource to then commission the consultants. So we need to get the consultants up on board and working back end of this year so that we should start to have some output early 2023. Yeah, that's right.
Right, so I just thought that Scrutiny would like to see those early master plans. Councillor Cooper?
Just wondering whether it would be appropriate for us to have a session with HD1, maybe a private session. I just love to see them and hear from them about what their plans are, what their thoughts are, show that we are interested, that as elected members we care about what's going on with what they're doing, to draw them in a bit more into what we're doing. So I think there'd be a value in that, and I think it could be an interesting dialogue, an interesting conversation, and a positive thing to do.
Okay. Yeah. There's two master plans referred to in the report, but your comment applies to both. The first is the work that we're doing around the station to stadium corridor, where we are a couple of weeks away from having the first draft of a master plan. And then the second master plan is the one I'm referring to in terms of the wider station gateway, which we haven't started the works yet, but your point applies equally to both.
Thank you, Chair. So on the master plans and them coming here, I'm quite happy for them to come back as soon as possible. The only thing is I'd want them to be fairly well fleshed out at that point, because I think at Scrutiny, if we haven't got a level of detail, we kind of fall down, and it's a bit, we're talking about ifs and ands, basically, So I think it'd be good to have a little bit more flesh on the bones before they get here.
Okay, so maybe we could have some conversations about the best timing for those, and when you'd have something that we could look at. And also, you mentioned station to stadium. Are you looking beyond the centre of town for the station to stadium? You talk about the employment, but the ease of getting station to stadium, are you looking at that as well? Because yes, it can be walked via various routes, but some of the routes aren't exactly easy, are they?
Yeah, that's exactly the sort of thing that the master plan's tackling. It's not just a movement plan, but yeah, movement is a key element of the wider plan, yeah.
And I think we'd also like to see your consultation plans for your winter 2022 consultation, please. We can always do those by email if we haven't got a suitable meeting, but just to see them ahead of them going out would be good, yeah. Sometimes it's good to have a different set of eyes on things like that. I've always found that sometimes Scrutiny can help if there's language in them that maybe everybody understands because they're well into the project, but somebody coming at it with fresh eyes might not follow. I think that's been useful in the past. Okay, Councillor Lawson.
Chair, I'd support that. I've seen it work well in the past. For example, when we worked together at Mid Yorkshire Health Trust, it was valuable, and there was input that we could make that was of use. So yeah, I'd support that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so if there's no further points on the two reports, on the agenda, thank you for your time today. The panel will now move into informal session, and so the public meeting will now end. Thank you.